And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Ricky K, Alden K, Mike Patt in the house, episode number 3. And we are just 2 weeks away from the start of the Major League Baseball season. We're going to keep taking you around spring training. What are some things that we've seen so far this week in the spring? We got Roki Sasaki making his spring debut for the Dodgers tonight. That should be a lot of fun. We're going to go around our divisions as we look ahead to the year in the AL East. 5 really interesting teams, probably the most competitive division in Major League Baseball. The Yankees got injuries. The Rays playing Steinbrenner Field. The Red Sox have third base hits, controversies. The Orioles didn't really add anything, but they're here. And the Blue Jays, really competitive team. We'll dive into them. We'll talk college softball. A lot of ranked versus ranked in the SEC coming up this weekend. We'll talk college baseball. We have a player hitting 4 home runs and a team that scored 23 runs in an inning without getting a home run or a triple. That's small ball baseball in a nutshell. We want you involved, so stay tuned. Coming up next, Bullpen Bulletin, episode 3. We will see you in just a minute. And of course, welcome back to episode 3 of the Bullpen Bulletin, IE Sports Radio, direct feed Pro Sports. Ricky, Alden, Mike in the house with you. Of course, want to remind you before we get everything started that you can follow us on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube at IE Sports Radio. Check out our page as well on the website, iesportsradio.com/Bullpen Bulletin. And remember, if you missed any portion of the show or you just want to hear us debate again, you can download the podcast afterwards on Apple, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Anywhere you get your podcast, chances are that's where you'll find us. You can also find us on X at BP Bulletin _IESR. Follow us personally at Rickeneer55535. That's me. Alden at VAZTRL. And then Mike at Let's Wine _IESR. Do want to also remind you about our supporters club. For $5 a month, if you do decide to subscribe and support this new show, we will do a show about your favorite team, your favorite player. Heck, you might even be a guest on the show. It goes to a great cause. So please, if you love the show, it's just $5 a month. We'll have some fun along the way. So thanks for joining in. Of course, we got a couple of comments here in the chat. We got Ralph, 3 guys talking baseball. It's like an immaculate inning. I don't know if we throw 9 strikes all the time. And this, I got bad command personally, so I don't know how that's going to work. But
yeah.
And then Larry B.
Throw more than 60. Sorry.
Yeah. I would never have good speed pitches or velocity. I'd probably have good control though. But yeah.
So all that's gonna be the guy to throw strikes. We're just gonna the Mike and I are just gonna throw it and hope it lands in the zone.
Get it close. Just get it close.
Get it close. So we'll take our first break. We'll come back. We'll talk spring training, what has stood out this week in the Grapefruit and Cactus League, and we'll go around the American League East. Some real interesting teams in this division as we continue our look at all the divisions in baseball up until opening day at the end of March, at least for most teams not named the Cubs and the Dodgers. You're listening to the Bullpen Bulletin on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all this sports. We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clanking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. IE Sports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
Welcome back to the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all their sports. Thanks to our awesome sponsors for supporting the show. Of course, Plant Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, great snack to have at opening day. Be sure to order yours before the end of the month. Of course, supporting Vital Apparel. We're representing mental health awareness, very important cause. Check that out. Seal the Deal Wax Seals for all your awesome invitations. And, of course, you can check out our newest sponsor, Raw Nutrition Supplements. But at GetRawNutrition.com, use the promo code IESR, and you get 10% off of your purchase. Be sure to check that out today. A couple comments before we get into it. Larry, we're not going to try to talk any Angels today. I think that's the goal. I think we're going to go an Angel-free show. We'll see where we're at. And then before we get into spring trading, Ralph actually asked a really good question. Of all the new stats in baseball, which one is your guy's favorite? Mine is defensive runs saved or DRS by a player. Now, I'm not a big advanced stats guy, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you have a favorite analytical stat that you like to look at?
I don't remember the exact term, but they calculate your a pitcher's ERA independent of the defense. I forget exactly what that term is called, but that's a pretty cool metric because sometimes your defense behind you really just kind of suck. So it can be helpful for some pitchers to kind of see that aspect of it. Like what would my ERA be with normal defense behind me? Again, I forget the exact term is, but they've got a way to calculate it. So I think that one's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll have to look at more regarding the stats, but to go off Ralph's stat that he named out, yeah, defensive runs that are saved by a player, that's very important. And of course, the pitching stat line, obviously, not every run that teams give up is the pitcher's fault, and if that makes any sense. So, yeah, to a certain degree, those are good stats as well. But like I said, I'll have to look more into it. It is interesting, though.
So I think, Mike, you're looking for ERA plus, I think is the one. I
I think
always make
so,
fun
yeah.
of that because it's like, what is your number in the fifth inning on a Wednesday in May when it's cloudy and there's two guys on base? But you tend to appreciate those. Mine would be OPS plus. I kind of like the fact that you can kind of determine who's an average player, who's not an average player. Kind of take a look at that. If I do look at it, the stats, probably that one. But that definitely a good question. I do like looking at those numbers. Brian from the Beantown Sports Pound is here. Some Sox spring training. We already get to some Red Sox coming up in a little bit, which is great. And then
Great
Ralph
show
saying
last week, by the
opening
way,
day.
Brian.
Definitely welcome to the team, Brian. And then Ralph talked about Cole versus Skeens opening day. We're going to get into that in a future show. I kind of want to do in a couple weeks, like our favorite opening day pitching matchup. Once we get all the official pitchers, like which ones we watch, but we're going to get into that. But as we've done the last couple of weeks, we've looked at spring training going on in the Grapefruit and the Cactus League. So we'll start, Alden, with you. Do you have a takeaway from spring training action this week?
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to bring up I was thinking of talking Angels, but for the respect of Larry, I won't bring them up. But I kind of wanted to start off with a prospect over in Seattle. So the Mariners, they play over here in Arizona in the Peoria Stadium, and I believe he was the 40th ranked prospect. Lazaro Montes for the Mariners has been looking pretty good in spring training so far. The other day, I forgot who they played. I think it was Cleveland. He went 1-for-1. He drew up a couple walks, and his the only hit that he had was a double, and I believe it was an RBI double too. So that was their recent game. But overall, I don't remember the stats off the top of my head, but he's been a guy that has looked really impressive for Seattle so far. And also regarding the Texas Rangers, I did want to point out that when they played the Diamondbacks a couple days ago, Adolis Garcia got injured. He underwent an MRI for, I believe it was an oblique strain or something like that. So something to keep an eye on regarding the Rangers. But when they played the D-backs recently, even though they beat the crap out of us, Adolis Garcia went down in that game. So regarding the Diamondbacks, though, I'll keep it short and sweet. The pitchers have looked pretty good so far for them, and the batters, the only time they don't really tend to give up runs so far is when the backups are playing. So our starters are looking pretty good all around. Uh, and of course, the Dodgers, who are playing over in Mesa, obviously Sasaki playing later today. Definitely going to keep an eye out on that. Definitely going to look back on that game. Also, along with Yamamoto as well. So overall, in Arizona games, spring training is looking pretty good so far. And like I said, and I'll keep saying it, all these teams that play in Arizona gives me a really good opportunity to take a look at what the D-backs competition might be in the NL or AL this year. So definitely some good storylines going on right now. But yeah, the Mariners with Lazaro Montes, I like the way how he's looking in spring training so far, and we'll see how Adolis Garcia gets regarding his injury. But other than that, same old spring training looking good so far.
The spring training injuries are just crazy. It seems like all these guys, before I get to you, Mike, just go through oblique injury and shoulder injury. And I don't know, Harold Reynolds was talking about it today on Hot Stove, that it seems like a lot of these injuries are just because guys are working out in the winter, and it comes from that as opposed to end of season stuff. And you wonder, like, we get to spring training and you watch all these things. And I was ranting yesterday about it on my show, New York State of Sports Every Monday here on the network, about spring training is the worst thing for baseball fans, because baseball itself is preaching patience in an impatient society where we want instant results. And if your guy doesn't go 4 for 8 out of the gate, it's panic time or whatever. So to me, I don't know. Spring training to me is too long, but I get why, because the pitchers are there. But it just seems like there's 4 or 5 guys getting hurt every day. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's that time of year, and unfortunately, it's kind of the byproduct of, these guys. You start to ramp up to playing. Yeah, you've been working out, but you haven't been playing competitive baseball in several months, and sometimes it's just bound to happen, kind of with the increase in effort, increase in work. Sometimes players are going to get hurt, and maybe players weren't necessarily taking proper care of like injuries in the offseason, for example. Like I know a handful of Orioles that ended the season injured in 2024, but like there were rumors, okay, maybe they'll get back for the playoff run. Turn around now, here we are 5 months later, and they're still hurt. And it's like, well, if they were ready for the end of 2024, how are they still hurt 5 months later? Like what was going on there? So I the injuries, they suck, but I mean spring training, it's a double-edged sword, because like Alden, like Ricky said, and I agree, there's a lot of impatience and there's a lot of rush for stuff, but on the other side, a lot of us, I think, are also just happy to be seeing baseball again. So I think, there's that element to it too. I think a lot of us are just kind of enjoying the game, enjoying seeing some of our favorite players back at it. I'm going to stick to kind of the DC area with my two teams kind of for spring training. Uh, the Orioles, I've been very happy with a lot of the pitching. A lot of the regular pitchers who are going to be making the MLB roster have been looking good, not giving up a ton of runs. A lot of the runs that they've been giving up have been from guys who are not going to be on the big league roster. So that's an encouraging sign to see. Felix Bautista, our all-star closer, who went down at the end of 2023 with Tommy John surgery, missed all of 2024. He came his first appearance in spring training, 1 inning, perfect, 2 strikeouts, touched 97 with the fastball. So that was really good to see him, not to upset Seattle fans, but then his nickname is King Felix here in Baltimore. So, again, not to upset Seattle fans, but and then also Cade Povich, a guy who not a lot of people were talking about, like in the rotation and pitching discussions for the Orioles, in 5 innings has a 0 ERA and a .4 WHIP. Which is fantastic to see from him. He's going to cause some discussions for the starting rotation for the Orioles. And for the Nationals, a guy who's kind of along the same veins, going to give the team some thoughts on how to construct their roster. Robert Hassel, a guy who came over in the Juan Soto trade, kind of one of the lesser-known pieces that came over from San Diego, who's been a bit obscure in the minors over the last 2 seasons, is batting over 500 in spring training, playing all 3 outfield positions and playing them well. And he's a guy who the team was kind of he was a little bit more advanced. I think he was already in Double-A when he was traded from Juan Soto, and the team was kind of waiting for a moment like this with him to emerge and make them think, okay, well, this guy's ready for the big leagues. And now you add him to that already young, exciting outfield of Dylan Cruz, James Wood, and Jacob Young. And now the Nats really have something interesting going with this group in the outfield.
You're definitely excited about the Nationals core, and then you're seeing the Juan Soto trade finally come to fruition for at least the Nats this year. And I was reading Mike Rizzo saying, look, we're looking to win. We're not looking to rebuild. So it's going to be, when we get to the Nats in a couple weeks, it's going to be fun to see what they got going on. One big injury for me to take a look at is in Atlanta. They battled so many injuries last year, and now Sean Murphy fractures his left rib getting hit by a pitch in the spring training game this week. He's going to miss 4 to 6 weeks at least, so his opening day is not going to happen. So the Braves are going to roll with Drake Baldwin. He was their 3rd-round pick in 2022 out of Missouri State, young catching prospect, one of their better prospects in the system. So in that Brave lineup, look, you just need him to catch Chris Sale and see what the rest of the starting pitching when Strider gets back, hopefully in the early portion of the season. If Baldwin hits, it's just icing on the cake. But the Braves, who are looking for more injury luck, haven't got it so far early. So we'll see what happens there. Of course, we are 2 weeks away from the season opener in the Tokyo Dome between the Cubs and the Dodgers. Speaking, like Alden said, Roki Sasaki did make his spring training debut tonight for the Dodgers against the Reds. He is pitching, I believe, right now. I'm pulling it up real quick. He is in the game right now, and as we're going live, an inning in the third, 2 hits. He has hit a batter, but he has struck out 3. So far, a pretty good spring debut for Sasaki in the States. So I have to get some tweets later up, see how he did in terms of velocity and stuff like that, but not a bad performance at all. So we take our quick look around the divisions. Last week, we took a look at the NL West. We go across the country to the American League East for this week. Definitely a lot. This is a very intriguing division just because all 5 of these teams, I think, can make pretty good cases for strong seasons. This is a division that can beat each other up. Last year, only 2 teams made the postseason. You could make the case that 3 have a chance this year, and you can make an argument for a bunch. So we're going to start, of course, over in the American. We're going to keep it down where Mike was talking about with the Nationals and instead going toward the Orioles. Of course, a team that didn't really make a lot of moves. A lot of people questioning the GM down there, if he really has the money to spend, why isn't he using it? But Mike, take us a look around the Orioles and what they've been doing so far this offseason.
So it's unfortunately been a lot of the same as Orioles fans have experienced the past couple of years. During the rebuild, or as a lot of Orioles fans on Twitter refer to it, the dark times from 2018 through 2021. A lot of the approach was kind of what I like to call bargain bin diving. You don't go for the big name guys, you don't go for the top dollar picks. You go down and you try to find the bargain deals, like those bins they have in the stores with the discount signs that say last chance and grab it while you can. That's kind of what the Orioles approach had been for a couple of years. Obviously, last year we thought that approach had been broken when they made the last minute trade for Corbin Burns before spring training began. I think a lot of us were crossing our fingers for maybe something similar. There were various rumors throughout the offseason. I mean, we were connected to basically every starting pitcher you could imagine. Not that any of it really held any merit, but they were just like, oh, the Orioles could use this guy. Oh, the Orioles could use this guy. Ultimately, it went kind of the same way. It just felt a little bit more expensive how much money they spent on some of these guys. But they did bolster at least the back end of the rotation, going out and getting Charlie Morton from the Braves, an older pitcher, but who admittedly has started 30 games each of the past 4 seasons. So, I mean, durable and useful, a guy with a ton of playoff experience, which is always useful. And then not the big name Japanese guy, but going out and getting Tomoyuki Sugano, somebody who's pitched in the Japanese leagues for many years, at least bringing an experienced arm to the back end of their rotation. And then offensively, they lost Anthony Santander. They went out and replaced him with Tyler O'Neill from the Red Sox. Santander probably has more power potential. O'Neill has a little bit of an injury history, but he's also a better defender. So I don't know if you can necessarily equate the two. The two contracts, dollar-wise, or at least yearly dollar-wise, were nearly identical. So in that way, they were kind of equal. But they basically did substitution right there. And then really the only other loss on the offensive side was backup catcher James McCann, who they went out and got Gary Sanchez. So offensively, the team is a couple of names change, but the production, the expectation is the same. It's really just going to be about how bad do they miss Corbin Burnes being that ace at the front of that rotation. He started every game he was supposed to, all 32 games, 22 quality starts, which was either the best or near the best in all the majors. So how do you replace that, especially with a pitching staff which has a lot of names that were in and out of the lineup last year? Grayson Rodriguez was hurt for part of the year. Dean Kramer was hurt for part of the year. Kyle Bradish got hurt started hurt, came back, got hurt again, and now he's going to miss the beginning of this season. So it's how do you manage the fact that you don't have that pillar in the beginning of the lineup of the rotation, and now you have to kind of try to replace that production. That's going to be the big question mark, but they still have all of their young core together. Gunnar Henderson was not an MVP candidate by accident, and he's a great player, great main hitter on the team. And then hopefully you see improvement from some of the young guys like Jackson Holliday. You hope he takes the next step. And then Heston Kjerstad and Kobe Mayo, two of their very exciting power hitting prospects. If those guys can take the step up, then the offense could potentially even be better, and that helps make up for what they lost in Burnes. Hopefully, the key is going to be the health of that rotation at the end of the day.
I was reading a tweet from Zach Britt, a reporter in Baltimore, talking with Zach Britton, and Zach Britton was saying that Cade Povich has the stuff. It's just about can he put everything together. So there's definitely a lot of upside with Povich. Grayson Rodriguez, of course, everyone's going to be looking to see what he can do. I'm a believer in Brandon Hyde. It's just about can the Orioles offense, and Gunnar's dealing with some injury problems, leaping for a ball in camp, gave him some side discomfort. So we'll see what happens with him. But definitely a lineup to definitely be excited about going into the year. Before we get into, of course, the controversy in Boston, we're going to quick look at the Tampa Bay Rays, who, of course, will not be calling Tropicana Field home this year due to the hurricane damages to the ballpark. They'll be playing at Steinbrenner Field, which is the Yankees spring training facility down in Tampa. So that'll be at least something to watch for the Rays. This is a Rays team I think that's really interesting. Last year they were 80 and 82. So they had a down year, but we're still right around 500. This year, FanDuel has their over-under at 81.5. So that's still about a 500 team. Player I'm interested in on the offensive side is Junior Caminero. Everyone remembers his bat flip in the Winter League, but they got him from the Guardians, and he's a player that definitely has a lot of upside and a lot of talent. And you look at this Rays team, they've got talent in their lineup, whether it's Yandy Diaz at the top, Brandon Lau is a really solid player. They got Christopher Morel in the Paredes deal last July. He doesn't really have a position, but he can rake. So you throw him into the mix there. They get Danny Jansen behind the plate. You got Jonathan Aranda as a DH candidate. They took a flyer on Eloy Jimenez this offseason. We'll see what he can do. It's not a Rays team known for their offense. It's known more for their defense, which struggled last year, and their pitching. And I think the pitching-wise, it's going to be great to see Shane McClanahan back on the mound, who recovered from Tommy John surgery. He's definitely, when he's on his game, one of the great young aces to watch. Taj Bradley, I think, is another one that took a step. We'll see if Pepio and Zach Littell, Shane Baz. Bullpen-wise, I think I love the trade they made for Alex Faedo. He's the perfect guy from Detroit they kind of can tinker with, do some things with. Pete Fairbanks is still there as the closer. Look, I won't doubt Kevin Cash. He's a guy that does the most with the least in all of sports. If he had just left Blake Snellen a few years ago, maybe the Rays have a World Series championship. But I'm interested to see how they do in a different ballpark, especially one that you're going to have to deal with weather for the first time. They're used to playing in a dome. how does that impact the team? And we'll talk about that when we get to the A's playing in Sacramento, how that affects them as a team. But when you're basically misplaced for the year, how much does that completely change things as they're talking long-term about a new stadium? I'll be interested. So the Rays, at the very least, are going to be a thorn in people's side, I think, for a lot of the year. It's just a matter of can they put it all together? And if they can't, we know that they do a good job of identifying prospects from other teams in deals to make themselves better. So just something to monitor over the course of the year. As we head up north to Beantown, and Alden, you're going to be talking about the Red Sox that already are dealing with some issues in camp. We've talked in the past about who's going to actually play third base. But if you take that problem aside, or the dilemma aside for Alex Cora, this is one of the Red Sox team that I would say is probably one of the more improved teams from the winter based on who they've added.
Yeah, and if Brian's still watching, he could also chime in here and talk about his team a little bit. But yeah, despite the drama that they have going on with Devers and of course signing Alex Bregman, which still not so sure about that contract. I mean, there are opt-outs, but there are teams that wanted him that probably dodged the bullet from that contract, like Detroit, for example. But overall, I think they still had a fairly decent offseason, especially on the pitching side. They traded for Garrett Crochet, which, going to be honest, that trade that the White Sox made still kind of makes me question the White Sox. But then again, the Red Sox got a pretty good pitcher with, I think it's 2 years left of his contract. So they have him, obviously. Patrick Sandoval, on the other hand, who was recently, I think he was on the 60-day injured list. So we'll see if he actually does play to start the year for the Red Sox. But if they do, then obviously him as well. And of course, Walker Buehler, who they signed to a 1-year deal. And I'm pretty sure in 26 there's an opt for his contract. But a guy who came back from injury last year on the Dodgers had a impact season on their World Series run. So, but they were really able to go out there and get some pitching this offseason too. And not to mention, I talked about the Bregman signing. I briefly talked about it. And yeah, they have some drama going on. I mean, Devers at third base, Bregman at third base. What are you going to do? Alex Cora? I mean, it's just, that is kind of the main question of the Red Sox right now. But if, offseason wise, with what they did in the offseason so far, I think that the Red Sox are going to make some noise this season. I think a lot of people are kind of they're talking about the Yankees and Orioles 1-2, this and that, but the Red Sox, they could make some noise to get that second place spot. Maybe depending on the Yankee season, they have a shot to win the division. So, but I think the Red Sox are contenders now after, ever since if I remember correctly, they have made very little playoff appearances since their last World Series win. So I think that this offseason really sent a message that they're finally going to start spending. And as Brian says, he was shocked that, they spent money, but, and yeah, Devers hasn't played in spring training yet. So that's another thing too. And players that don't play in spring training, it kind of has an impact on how they play in the regular season. So overall, though, I like what the Red Sox have done in this offseason, and I think that they are going to make some noise for the AL this season.
I'm a fan of the Red Sox from a talent perspective, because you look at them last year. This is a team that didn't really have the power, but they stole a lot of bases. And I know, Mike, you probably can attest to this because our teams watch the Red Sox constantly, playing them so many times. Like, if you look at Rafaela and Duran and all these kids they brought up, they played a different style. Like the rest of the division was slugging and the Red Sox were stealing and taking bases and playing differently. I'm not sure if adding Bregman is going to change that, but this is a team, I think, with a lot of upside when you consider Roman Anthony, Christian Campbell, Marcelo Mayer. They've got so many good prospects ready to go. My only question with the Red Sox is the bullpen, because they had Chapman. They're trying to see if they can get anything out of Liam Hendricks, which is a very good comeback story, but we'll see what happens with him. Justin Wilson. I think Cora is going to have an issue with the bullpen, and I think there's still a question if John Henry is going to and that front office going to necessarily add. But and as Brian even says, with losing Kenley Jansen, they don't have a closer, which I think is a concern. But I kind of like Cora's like if I had to pick one manager, and it pains me to say this, covering the Yankees, it would be Alex Cora I would want for my team because he seems to get the most out of everything. But I think they're the most. I don't know if they're the most boomer bust team, Mike, but it seems like they're either going to be really good or really bad.
I would agree with that. I think you said it exactly right. Boomer bust. I think every division has that one team where they really could go like if the drama consumes them and they can't figure out and the bullpen does completely collapse. In a division like this, they could very easily finish fifth. But then also to Alden's point, if it does all work together and the offense does click and they're able to figure out this drama with Devers and Bregman and they keep using that speed that Ricky brought up, then absolutely they could 100% challenge for the division title. And it wouldn't at the end of the season, it wouldn't surprise me if it went either way, because it's just there's a lot going on with Boston and teams like that, and that's uniform for any sport. The team with the most like kind of drama, discussion, different moving pieces is often the one that has the most variability in how they perform.
So we usually have us three dive into a team, and then two other teams we take into account and do kind of a group conversation. We, of course, saved an interesting team, and I think the Toronto Blue Jays are a real interesting team. Usually nobody takes their money. Nobody really wants to go to that team. And I think for considering all that, when you add Anthony Santander, as Mike is very familiar with, when you add Jeff Hoffman to reliever mix, you add Max Scherzer, who has looked really good this spring. Looks like kind of his former self. He can avoid the injuries. I know Alden will go to you first. They kind of have the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. contract not happening this offseason, kind of looming over this year, and Bo Bichette as well being a free agent. But on paper, you look at the Blue Jays, and I don't think people really talk about how good they can be.
Yeah, they can be good for this year, and of course, and I just like how they build a somewhat team where they can still compete despite missing out on so many players. I mean, it feels like these last couple years. I mean, even Ohtani was a rumor to the Blue Jays at one point, and Juan Soto and so many other guys are just rumored to go there, and they just cannot get them. And but they still somehow manage to build a team that looks good on paper, but they don't deliver. But this offseason, they got Santander. And the bullpen, obviously, with Jeff Hoffman, who had a really good year in Philly last season. So, and of course, Max Scherzer, which, he's looked good, but like you brought up earlier, the injuries are something that haunted him when he was in Texas. So, with that being said, and of course, the contract issues with Vladdy, it's definitely something that is concerning, but he is a Blue Jay for this year. So if we're talking about this year, and of course Bo Bichette also on a contract year, this team, they can compete, but they play in a very tough division. So it also depends on how they can get those wins over their division and be able to just get over the hump on other teams in that division. But I think that if they can be maybe an 80-win team at least, hopefully, if everything works well in their favor. But yeah, I just like how I'll just end with this. I just like how somehow they're able to have a team that isn't as bad as people think it's going to be, despite missing out on so many players. So that division is definitely going to be tough this year.
Mike, you look at this team; they won 74 last year, and this is a rotation. I think that when on its game is strong. And I even think one name I forgot to bring up, Andres Jimenez at second base, getting him in the trade with Cleveland. I mean, now you have Jimenez and Bichette up the middle. Jimenez is one of those guys that I really love from a contact hitting perspective from the left side. So I think this is a Blue Jay team. Over 500 should be an expectation, right?
Absolutely, and I was going to try to sneak Jimenez in. Neither of you had mentioned him yet. I was going to try to sneak him in there and be the guy, but you beat me to it, Ricky. But yeah, no, I mean, I think you look at the roster as a whole, and this team definitely improved. And adding Santander, who again, like all of you guys, like both of you guys noted, I'm very familiar with Santander. I was very sad to see him leave. I understand it's a business, however, and a guy who traditionally starts slow and doesn't end the season great. But what do they call them? They call them red hot hitters, or players who when it heats up, their balls just start to fly out of the stadium. And he was almost to an extreme that last year. His best part of the season was June, July, and August, when he was just crushing it. Most of his home runs, of his 44 home runs, came in that stretch. So probably from mid-May to early September, his bat in the middle of the lineup is going to be extraordinary for the Blue Jays. But yeah, I think, and it was another key piece in that they really didn't have a ton in the outfield around center fielder Dalton Varsho. So it at least gives them another piece in the outfield, another guy to lock in every day. The rotation, I'm concerned about the age. Obviously Scherzer, we know, getting up there in age. He's 40. He hasn't pitched more than 100. He's only pitched more than 115 innings once in the 2020s. So he's a guy, do you question, even if he's on, are you going to get 25 games out of him? Are you going to get a good number of innings? I think the rotation, the key to the rotation for the Blue Jays is it's probably going to come down to Alek Manoah, a guy who at one point was the ace of the staff and considered the guy, the future in Toronto, and then just completely fell off a cliff, but started to rebound a little bit last year, coming back from injury. And I think if he can get back at least some of that mojo, then he provides at least another good piece to really round out that group. But yeah, the rotation, even if he doesn't come back, it's still a solid rotation. It's an improved bullpen. It's an improved offense and defense with those additions. The question is did they do enough to bridge the gap? We talked about how they only won 74 games last year. They were about 20 games shy of the Orioles. I think maybe 17 or 17, because the Orioles were 91 and 71. And they were about 20 games shy of the Yankees. So did they do enough to close that gap? I don't know if I can say that. Did they maybe close the gap with the Rays, who won 80 games? You could probably make that argument a little bit. But did they close the gap on the rest of the division? That's a tough one to see.
Yeah, FanDuel has their over-under right now at 78.5. And to me, that just seems a little bit low, because we mentioned Barrios is, I think, someone you want to see consistency out of. But Bowden Francis is somebody to watch. He was really good in the second half last year. Right now, he's their 5 starter. So Toronto's definitely got depth in that rotation. We're just going to see what they do going forward, and can they bounce back. And finally, of course, the Yankees winning the AL East last year, winning the American League last year. Of course, everybody talks about Juan Soto not being there anymore. They've made moves over the winter that we'll get into, but they're also dealing with some injuries. This is a team that really has been bit by the injury bug this winter. Giancarlo Stanton starts the year on the IL with the tennis elbows. You have EJ LeMay, who gets hurt his second at bat in spring training, which should be no surprise to anybody. And Luis Gil is going to miss at least, he's not going to throw for 6 weeks due to the grade 2 lat. I don't know if it's a grade 2, but it's a high grade lat strain, an injury that Clark Schmidt missed 4 months last year with. Now, you could argue the whole Schmidt stuff, they were just slow playing that. But Yankees, outdoor you, Mike, first, have been kind of really snake bitten with injuries this camp. What do you make of this team? Are they better than last year with Soto? Are you concerned that they just seem to get hurt every day in spring training? What do you make of this group?
Yeah, I think the key to the Yankees is, I think one of the problems they had in the beginning of last year, which I mean clearly didn't impact them a ton because they still won the division, made the World Series. But I think the key to me for the Yankees is the balance of the lineup. There were stretches last year, and when they were dealing with an injury here and there, and a couple of guys not playing well, it was really just Volpe, Soto, Judge, and Wells really in that lineup, like 1 through 4. And then the Giancarlo Stanton wasn't hitting very well, and the rest of the lineup just wasn't producing. And I think that's the biggest difference I see is you go out, yes, you lose Juan Soto, which is it's a rough bat to lose, but you go out and you get a Cody Bellinger and you insert his bat into this lineup, and you get a Paul Goldschmidt, and maybe not guys that are going to produce on the same level as Juan Soto, but at least guys who are going to give you more options the further you get down the lineup. Having a guy in the 6th hole and 7th hole that can still hit is going to be the biggest difference between the Yankees, how they were last year for a large part of the season versus this year. The pitching rotation, they're relying very heavily on Max Fried staying healthy with that contract they gave him. If he does, that will certainly ease the loss of Luis Gil for the start of the season. But interestingly enough, and not a common thread for the Yankees, but it's going to come down to a couple of young pieces. Normally we're talking about new guys, new pieces, free agents, big name free agents coming in and having to pick up the slack. But to me, it's going to come down to some of the younger guys, particularly Jason Dominguez, who looks like he's going to have the inside track to one of the outfield spots with Judge and Bellinger. If his bat can pick up and he can bring a good quality everyday presence, that's certainly going to help. But look, any team that has Aaron Judge in their lineup is going to do some damage day in and day out. It's just a question of, do the other pieces around him, can the lineup be good top to bottom, and can they get some more out of some of the young guys to help make up with some of these injuries that Ricky mentioned?
Yeah, I'm excited just to see Jason Dominguez play a full season, at least getting an opportunity, something that Anthony Volpe's gotten and has had some good moments with. But Alden, what do you think of this Yankee team this year?
Yeah, so the first episode we had, I actually talked about how the Yankees were winners in this offseason, and I explained how they were better not giving Juan Soto $51 million a year, and it's because they had other issues to deal with, which led them to losing in the World Series in 5 games. And the bullpen obviously last year, they fixed that big time, trading for Devin Williams, and of course, like Mike mentioned, the lineups, they were completely out of hand last year, but they added bats and Bellinger and a veteran first baseman and Paul Goldschmidt after Rizzo had a disappointing year last season with the Yankees. So the team looks, in my opinion, better than it did last year with Juan Soto. But my concern for the Yankees, if my prediction's right, obviously I think the Yankees are gonna make the playoffs again, but while Aaron Judge is always great in the regular season, it also depends on Judge in the postseason, because Aaron Judge in the playoffs has always had like a dark cloud over him, is from what we all remember. And, obviously icing on the cake, he, dropped the ball in game 5 and it led to a 5-0 blown lead in game 5. So for me, it's about how the team plays in the postseason, being led by Aaron Judge. Obviously, a headline was, oh yeah, they should give Juan Soto Aaron Judge's contract, this and that. But now that he's not there anymore, the team is going to all depend on how Aaron Judge leads them in the postseason. Like, we know the Yankees can get to the postseason. We know they're most likely going to get there with the team that they have. I think it's better than it was last year. But for me, it's just the playoffs and the AL. And playing in a tough division too, you could have a really good chance at playing a division rival in the playoffs as well. So facing a team that knows you pretty well in the postseason, you're going to want your guys to really show up, and especially Aaron Judge. So I think that the Yankees are in good hands despite the early injuries. Yes, they are dealing with injuries, but with the additions that they made, with the guys that they have that are capable to step up, obviously the young guys, and we're talking about young guys too, not guys that the Yankees spent money on, young guys that they can actually develop, like Volpe and Dominguez. So I think that Yankees, they have what it takes to get to the playoffs, but for me, it's just, how are they going to play in the playoffs, obviously being led by Aaron Judge as well.
Yeah, the young players, I agree. Looking at a couple other guys, Ben Rice, is somebody that got a chance last year, hit 3 homers against the Red Sox, and then really struggled throughout the rest of the year. He's added some muscle. See what he can do, either at backup Goldschmidt at first or backup Austin Wells behind the plate. Will Warren's had a really good spring training, and that's pitching depth the Yankees need outside of him and Carrasco now that Marcus Stroman is essentially going to be in the rotation. My concern is third base. LeMahieu gets hurt, and right now it's Oswaldo Cabrera and Oswald Peraza. I still think the Yankees are going to end up with Nolan Arenado at some point. To me, I know they don't want to go over, but it just seems like so much of a fit. And Arenado last week played against the Yankees in Tampa and made up that it wasn't a showcase. They just wanted to see Goldschmidt and LeMahieu and hang out with his buddies from Colorado. I can believe that, but at some point he's trying to showcase himself. And if the Yankees are really going to go over this luxury tax, just go over and make the move. They need someone at third with Jazz at second. So we'll see what happens with that. But real quickly, guys, we went around and made picks last week, so we're making some picks here. Mike, I'll start with you. What does your AL East look like this year?
So the problem with this division, and I think we've talked about it, all of these teams are good. I think, we talked about the NL West last week, and there's kind of a pretty clear-cut team that you could put in the bottom. I don't know if there's necessarily the case here. I'm going to go with I'm going to regret doing this because I feel like they're like the Pittsburgh Steelers of baseball. They always somehow manage to be good. But I'm going to put the Rays in here at 5 just because it has to be someone. And I think, the Rays are a team, like I said, with a lot of intrigue, but Alden touched on a really key point. How is that displacement? How is playing somewhere that you're not familiar with in an environment that's different, going from a dome to outdoor setting every day? How is that going to impact this team, the new place, the lack of familiarity? I think it could do just enough in a very tough division to bring them down and again, you're only talking about needing to come down a couple of games to be the last place team. So I'm going to say the Rays at 5 here. I'm going to put, we kind of touched on them. I'm going to put Toronto at 4. I think they do better. I think they flirt with 500. I think if I were to give a prediction, I think the Rays and Blue Jays kind of essentially trade like records, essentially. I think the Rays maybe drop a little bit to that mid-70s range and Toronto gets up to 80, 81. I think they'll be good. Like I said, I just don't know if they did enough to bridge that gap between them and the rest of the division. A team that did bridge the gap pretty well, and I'm going to put them at 3rd still, but I think it's going to be a lot closer, and I think they're definitely strongly in the playoff discussion is the Red Sox. I think they're going to make it very close with the Yankees and the Orioles. Very fair chance to sneak into 2. I do wonder if that drama is just going to add just that little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of, maybe throw the rhythm off a little bit at times to just keep them just a couple of games below where they could finish. So I'll say the Red Sox at 3. I would love to put them at 1, but I think the Orioles are still second fiddle here. Just did not do enough. Their recent history of pitching industry injuries, they're taking a leap of faith by trusting the current group of guys to stay healthy long enough through the season with not a ton of reinforcements. I know we talked about Cade Povich, but if they lose 1 or 2 arms out of this rotation for any amount of time, they're going to be struggling to fill the back end. And that's also relying on a couple of older arms who have so far defied Father Time, but Father Time wins at the end at some point. And then the Yankees at 1. I don't know if they repeat as 94-game winners. I think, Ricky, you kind of mentioned it. This is a division that's probably going to beat each other up throughout the season, exchange wins and losses here and there. But I think the Yankees, they still have enough. We mentioned it. Aaron Judge, despite his postseason struggles, is a monster regular season player. And if they just get a little bit more production out of some of these guys, they have a full season of Jazz Chisholm, who they traded for at the deadline. I forgot Alden, you brought him up. I forgot to mention him, or maybe Ricky, one of you brought him up. And then I agree with Ricky. I think they make that trade, even if it's not Arenado, they find some other good quality third baseman to fill out the lineup. Although it is fascinating to me to be talking about Nolan Arenado re-teaming up with Paul Goldschmidt in 2025 with a completely different team.
Alden, what are your thoughts on the division?
Yeah, so and like Mike said, this is probably the only division, or maybe one of the few divisions where it can go any freaking way you can think of. Like, NL West, we know who's going to finish last. Heck, even the NL East, even though I think they're a tough division, we probably know who's going to finish last. Like all these other divisions, this might be the toughest division in baseball. Toughest division in AL for sure, which isn't saying much. But at number 5, I'll go with Tampa Bay. While, yes, maybe their team is a little bit better than people give them credit for. I still don't like their situation with just not having a place to call home. I think that's going to take a big toll on them as a team. And that stadium just being destroyed and having to play in a different location for a whole year, it's definitely going to take a toll on them. I do like some of the moves that they made though, but with the division difficulties and playing in a different arena, I'm going to put them at last. I'll put Toronto at number 4. And, like we've mentioned earlier, their team has what it takes to be very competitive, but it's just with the Vladdy situation going on, and of course with the rotation that is aging up, their bullpen, while they have Hoffman, but still questions on that end of the bargain. I think that they're going to finish 4th again. So evidently Tampa Bay and Toronto switching places in the division. I'm going to make an upset call here. I don't know if it's an upset, but I'm actually going to put Baltimore at 3rd. I think that Baltimore has good bats, but they kind of remind me of what this year the Orioles could be what the Diamondbacks were last year. They have very good bats and they put up all of these runs, this and that, but if your pitching is too injured and if your pitching isn't, as productive as it could be, it doesn't matter how many runs you put up. If your pitching's bad, your pitching's bad, and it's going to lose you games. So for me, the Orioles season is going to depend on the production of the pitching. But, they remind me of what the Diamondbacks were last year. They put up all of these runs and their pitching was bottom 5. So if the Orioles go through that situation, obviously losing their ace in Corbin Burns going to take a big effect on their pitching, and being in a tough division, then I could see them finishing 3rd place this year. And I'm going to be putting the Red Sox at number 2 with their pitching additions that they made. And you mentioned earlier the speed that they have, the young players that they have. I think that in only a matter of time, they will figure out their drama issues with Bregman and Devers. And obviously they have the rest of spring training and little close to a month to figure it out. And I think they will by then. And I think that they'll have a productive season. But yeah, the bullpen, another concern. It's kind of the same as the Orioles, just not the starters, but the bullpen. If the bullpen blows you so many games, it's going to take a toll on your record. So, but I'll put the Red Sox at 2nd, and I got the Yankees repeating the division win. Win total is a little bit of a question for me. Like Mike had mentioned, 94 wins. Do they improve? Do they go lower? See what happens. But with that team that they have, I do think that it's better than last year. And of course, you mentioned the third base needs. The Yankees are a team that can literally do anything at the trade deadline. And, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but there are teams in that division that could make a move at the trade deadline that make them a lot better. And for all we know, it could make them finish higher in the division that we're predicting right now. But for now, I'm going to put the Yankees at 1st and repeating it. And this is my take. While I predict the Yankees to win the division, like I said, it could go any way. But overall, this division, my prediction is that the team that wins this division is the team that's going to the World Series and representing the American League.
All right, I'm liking the hot takes here in March is pretty good here. I don't know if it's a hot take, but it's where we're at. I'll make it short and sweet. I basically have Alden's 5. My reasoning on Boston over Baltimore is, again, I just got to see the Orioles make a move. And I'm not talking like Zach Eflin kind of move. Like, I'm talking a move. They've got prospects. Trade Mike Elliott's from the Astros. I get you love your prospects. Trade some. Get some good play. Get the impact player because that core is too good. I think the Red Sox, my X factor is Garrett Whitlock. I think he might end up being the guy in the back of that bullpen. Even if it's as a swing guy, we'll see. I mean, Bayo and Tanner Houck are going to help that rotation. And Lucas Giolito comes back, so at least we'll see what he gives them. I just think I trust Cora's pedigree a little bit more. I think they're a team that is going to make that push. I think Baltimore can be a playoff team, and I let Mike defend it before we go to break. I just think the group in Boston, I think if they could get through this controversy stuff, and I think they will because the manager's that good, they'll be fine. And if their pitching has more upside, at least from a veteran perspective, Baltimore's youth is going to be fun to watch. I think I'm going to take veteran over youth just for now.
Yeah, no, and I'm not mad at it. I mean, the Red Sox have definitely improved, and the Orioles didn't make a move. One of the keys to the season, and it's going to be interesting to watch, is they have two guys. I mentioned one of them. I might not have been live. It might have been to you guys on the break before we went on, but Kyle Bradish and Tyler Wells. These are two guys who, if you flash back to 2023, when this pitching was on fire and this team won 101 games, those guys were two keys to the pitching staff. Both spent most of last year injured. Both are not going to be back to start the season. I would anticipate Tyler Wells will be back right before the All-Star break. I think Bradish, you're looking more end of July. If those two guys can come back and they can come back healthy, Bradish would be in the rotation. Wells would probably be in the bullpen. But if they can come back healthy and give us that second half surge, then I think that's going to be a key for the Orioles if they can make a run late in the season. But I mean, I can't be mad at a prediction when this team, their biggest signing was a 35-year-old Japanese pitcher.
So let's take a quick timeout. We'll come back. We'll talk college baseball. We'll talk college softball, and then we'll wrap it up by going around the diamond. You're listening to Bullpen Bulletin on iSports Radio, direct feed for all the sports. We'll be right back after this.
What's up, guys? If you're looking for the best coverage of all Northern California sports, including 49ers, Giants, Warriors, then check out the NorCal Sports Report with yours truly, Andre Fernandez, every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all the sports. We have guests every single week talking 49ers, Giants, Warriors, Sharks, San Jose Earthquakes, and a whole lot more, plus 3C2A. You do not want to miss this show. So tune in Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Pacific Time to the NorCal Sports Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daryl Kinsey Jr., and I'm welcoming you to take another lap with the fastest show on IE Sports Radio. Yes, this is the Extra Mile with me and my co-hosts Christopher Lehman and Michael Ward. We talk everything racing from NASCAR to IndyCar to Formula One to limited hydroplanes, endurance racing, the NHRA, and more. So come join us for an hour of great racing talk and a lot of fun as well on the Extra Mile, Thursdays at 8 p.m. only on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back to the Bullpen Bulletin, episode 3 here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We move over from the big leagues to college, a little NCAA baseball for you. And of course, we're getting closer to conference play, which we're going to get to. Softball's got conference play. Real quickly, a couple score updates. Texas A&M, who is number 1, has been slipping drastically. They're losing tonight to the Roadrunners of Texas San Antonio, 7-4 in the 8th. North Carolina stayed undefeated with an extra inning win over Coastal Carolina, battle of ranked teams there. And there was one more interesting one. Number 7 Florida got upset by UCF 13-3. So the Gators taking a big hit. Oklahoma also was playing Dallas Baptist in the battle of ranked teams. Dallas Baptist mercied Oklahoma 11-0 in 7. So the Sooners no longer undefeated. Sorry, Tornado Takeover. Real quick, Mike, what's your baseball update this week?
So I'm going to move over and I'm going to have a repeating theme for baseball and softball. We'll get to softball in a minute, but I'm going to talk about the Tennessee Volunteers in baseball, undefeated, moving up the rankings, especially with Texas A&M dropping due to their recent cold streak, but playing great baseball, playing balanced baseball, top 10 in both batting average, team batting average, and team ERA, and some great individual performers as well. Liam, and I'm blanking on his last name. I believe his last name is Dorrell for Tennessee, pitching masterful baseball so far. Actually, I saw somebody on Twitter or X. They put his stats up next to Jamie Arnold's of Florida State, and he is beating Arnold across the board through the early part of the season. So they're getting great pitching, well-balanced hitting, and the Tennessee Volunteers are looking like a team where if they can keep this momentum going, they are going to be a serious threat come College World Series time.
Tennessee definitely establishing themselves in the SEC, a couple very strong rotation as well. Alden, what are your baseball thoughts this week? What you got?
Yeah, so I'll shift over to North Carolina a little bit, a team that is currently 13-0, so they're looking pretty good so far for this season. And I want to kind of point out their next series. Their game tomorrow got postponed against Charleston, but they are playing Stanford pretty soon in a 3-game series, and they're currently 10-2. So I wanted to highlight that series out. But yeah, they're coming off, like you said earlier, in 11 innings. That win against Coastal was pretty nice, the 24th ranked team, and they just continue to look pretty good with the bats. They scored double-digit runs in multiple games, but overall, being like the Stanford series, something to definitely keep an eye on. 2 tough teams. They're also playing UNCW pretty soon as well after the Stanford series, so just a couple games to look at right there. But the Tar Heels are looking really good so far, and they just keep on going with the bats and the pitching. They deliver when they need to as well, which led them to that win against Coastal. But I like the way the Tar Heels are looking so far, but definitely going to keep an eye on the Stanford and North Carolina series here pretty soon.
Yeah, as Alden mentioned, big series this weekend. Stanford, of course, has Rintaro Sasaki, who we look at these phenoms from Japan from the pitching side. Sasaki's kind of a phenom from the hitting side that elected to go to college. And he's a player that's gotten off to a really good start. I think he's hit around 380 so far. So he is definitely looking to be a good player. And of course, Stanford now in the ACC, which makes this a real interesting conference matchup. Oregon is also at USC this weekend. So that's a good one there. A couple of noteworthy performances. Dale Francis Jr. from Gardner-Webb. Now, why do I bring up Gardner-Webb? He hit 4 home runs this weekend in a game, drove in 12, and Gardner-Webb needed all 12 because they won 16-14 over Appalachian State. You rarely ever see a 12 RBI game that actually all 12 runs mattered. And he got the Barry Bonds treatment. He got intentionally walked with the bases loaded when he had a chance at a 5th home run. So definitely maybe some strategy there. This is a guy who transferred from Erskine College, which is the Fighting Fleet. That's a cool nickname, but that college out in South Carolina. So congrats to Dale Francis Jr. on that accomplishment. And then earlier today, George Mason was taken on Holy Cross. George Mason scored an NCAA record 23 runs in the 3rd inning en route to a 26-6 win. In that 23-run inning, they had 18 straight batters reach base. They did not need a home run or a triple to score any of those runs. So small ball people love that entirely. And George Mason's been playing well. They've got 63 runs in their last 5 games. They only have 12 home runs as a team, and 5 are from one player. So the Colonials really do a good job, I think, of small ball. They're hitting about 352 as a team. So shout out to George Mason doing some good things there. And Larry is enjoying all of our awesome college talk. So we'll keep that going with some softball. And I think it's going to be a real fun week going into softball here because you've got so many good teams, and we'll get into it. It's just SEC, and we hate talking about it, but I was mentioning to Tornado Takeover, 8 of the top 10 are SEC schools. So that's just where we're going to be for the remainder of the year. But Alden, who do you got for some softball action this week?
Yeah, so I'll take it over to the Pacific Northwest for the Oregon Ducks. And so far they're 20-1 on a 15-game win streak. And ironically, the only team to beat them were my ASU Sun Devils. So, but overall, a 15-game win streak so far for Oregon. And a couple games that I'll be looking forward to is they're playing Florida State at home, who was ranked 8th for softball so far. They're taking them on in a few days. So Oregon and Florida State is a game I'll be looking forward to. And then obviously the good old rivalry, hometown rivalry, I guess. They're taking on Oregon State the day after the Florida State game. So the Ducks so far, definitely a softball team that I think a lot of people look at, but not as much as other teams. So I wanted to recognize the Oregon Ducks a little bit, but the Florida State and Oregon game, definitely going to be a game that I'll be looking into, and their bats just continue to stay alive too, and their pitching delivers. These last few games or so, they haven't given up more than 1 run. Last 4 games, the last time they gave up a bunch of runs was about a week ago against San Diego. But since then, they haven't really given up a whole lot of runs, so their pitching's looking good, and their batters just continue to put up 6-7 runs a game. So definitely Oregon is a team I wanted to recognize in the softball segment.
Mike kind of teased it earlier, but let's go back to Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm going real far. I'm going real far away, guys. I'm traveling super far. It's a long walk across the street, probably. I don't know how Tennessee's layout is, but I'm guessing their softball field's probably not too far away from their baseball stadium. But yeah, I'm gonna shout out the Tennessee Volunteers, specifically the Tennessee Volunteers pitching, and even more specifically, Peyton Tanner, freshman pitcher, who threw a perfect game this past Saturday, and that followed up Carlin Pickens, another one of their pitchers who pitched a no-hitter prior to that. So a no-hitter for the Tennessee Volunteers, followed by a perfect game. The team gave up 0 runs this past weekend. You heard that right, 0 runs the entire weekend. And so far on the season has a .77 ERA, and that's going to win you a good number of softball games if you can keep that up. So, I mean, the Volunteers, their pitching just absolutely outstanding. Carlin Pickens, Peyton Tanner, fantastic efforts, and yeah, let's see if they can keep it up, because I mean, if you're going to beat the big dogs in college softball, you are going to need kind of some of these extremes like this, and they're certainly getting it.
Definitely some great SEC matchups this week. Tennessee's at Georgia. Florida's at Texas A&M. That's a battle of 2 top 5 teams. Auburn's at Mississippi State. I'm going to highlight, there was a couple of ranked versus ranked over the weekend. South Carolina is off to a really good start. They're 19-0. They took on Duke, and they swept them and dominated really on offense. And it started with first baseman Ariana Rhodey. She has 8 home runs on the season. She had 4 home runs and 12 RBI in the 3 games in Durham. So South Carolina went on the road to get this done. And I'm a fan of this team. I think that when you look at the SEC, we talk about Tennessee, we talk about Florida, we talk about LSU, who was playing UCLA this past week. South Carolina, but they're going to get tested. I don't think they're going to get through being undefeated this weekend because they're going to Norman to take on those Lady Sooners, who, of course, continue to win national championship after national championship. But that'll be a really interesting game. South Carolina is up to the top 10 in the country. So definitely we're used to talk about them with football or talk about them with baseball. So really good to see them doing some things in softball. So those are a couple of things. So we got a lot of ranks. Also, Oklahoma State is at Texas Tech. And the pitcher we talked about, Emma Lemley, Virginia Tech, she takes on Virginia in a battle of ranked versus ranked in the ACC. So check out some of those matches. We'll have a lot to dive into next week on those. So as we get toward the end of our show, we tend to usually go around the diamond. That's where each of us get to talk about, well, whatever the heck we want, because we don't have a set play in baseball. We might run a safety squeeze. We might run a sacrifice fly. It doesn't matter. Alden, I'll start with you. What do you got for your around the diamond?
Yeah, just continue with spring training. I really like what I'm seeing from other teams so far regarding their young guys. Obviously, the injuries continue to, I don't want to say annoy me, but it's definitely a concern for, guys to get hurt a lot during spring training. But we talked about it earlier. Corbin Carroll got hurt with back tightness, so yay, another injury on our team. But it wasn't serious, so hopefully it'll just go away and he can come back and pick up where he left off, because he has dominated in spring training so far. So just carries that into the regular season would be nice, but the team has to stay healthy. But overall, just keep looking at what teams are doing in Arizona. I might even, look a little bit more into the teams that are playing in Florida for spring training while I get the chance. But definitely looking forward to the next division that we talk about. I kind of already have an idea for it, but definitely really liked what I saw from the prospect I brought up earlier and over in Seattle. And then of course there's over 10 stadiums of spring training in Arizona, so I can only look at so many as many opportunities as I get. And there's 2 teams that play in each stadium too. So as I continue to go stadium by stadium, I did kind of look news at the Angels a little bit. Obviously, I know Larry didn't want me to talk about them, but I guess we're towards the end of the show, so I'll bring up Zach Neto is going to miss the beginning of the season, so it really does depend on how that position looks in spring training. I know they brought in Tim Anderson, so it might be him, but with Neto being out for the start of the season, it's definitely going to depend on how they look in spring training on who Ron Washington replaces him with for the time being. And I might have to take it over to Mesa a little bit, take a look at the Dodgers and the White Sox and how they're doing on spring training so far. But yeah, that's what I've been doing lately. Just go stadium by stadium, take a look at how teams are doing in spring training. Like I said, I looked at the Rangers the other day and how Adolis Garcia got hurt, but their team still looks pretty good so far. But yeah, overall, just continue to look at spring training while I still can. I know spring training goes by fast for me, and then before you know it, it's opening day. So, but definitely like what I'm seeing from certain teams and keep looking at it for spring training as it goes by.
Mike, what you got?
So I am going to give a kind of a shout out or a highlight to a Nats player here, a guy by the name of Stone Garrett, name that maybe you guys have heard of, maybe you didn't, maybe you haven't heard of. Alden might have heard from him. He actually came over to the Nats from Arizona, but he joined the team in 2023, kind of in the midst of our deep dive, the Nats deep dive rebuild post Juan Soto trade, and he actually showed up very well for the team. In about half a season, he posted an 801 OPS and about a 2 WAR, 1.9 WAR. So he was looking really good kind of through 2023. Then he got hurt right at the end of the season. He missed most of 2024, and by the time he was healthy in 2024, the team had already called up James Wood, called up Dylan Cruz. Jacob Young had solidified a spot in center field. So there really wasn't a spot for him. And then this offseason, they just added more pieces. And as I discussed earlier in the spring training segment, the emergence of Robert Hassel. Garrett is a guy who we were excited for at one point. He's kind of gotten boxed out by the numbers game. He got DFA'd this past week, but he cleared waivers and was outrighted to AAA. So he'll start the season in AAA for the Nats. I don't hope that he necessarily gets his chance, because that usually means that somebody ahead of him has gotten hurt or is playing ineffectively. But I do hope to see him get another chance in the big leagues, because he's a solid player. He's got good power. He's not going to be a speedster or necessarily a defensive whiz, but he's one of those guys who kind of came out of nowhere, and you just like to see him succeed, and you like to root for those guys.
My going around the diamond was looking at Rob Manfred, who, of course, it came out a few days ago that he's considering a petition to reinstate Pete Rose. Of course, Pete Rose passed away in September. We all know about Pete Rose being on the permanently ineligible list in baseball for gambling on baseball back in the late 80s as a manager. And my thing is this: so we're essentially waiting for Pete Rose to pass away to do this. To me, if you're going to do this, the steroid, and it should put Pete Rose eligible for the Hall of Fame, the steroid guys need to be in the Hall of Fame. Now they should be. We can do this on a future show. They should be in anyway, because I think, to me, you're denying an era of baseball that the commissioner who presided over it is in the Hall of Fame. But I think if you were going to consider this, you should have considered this while he was alive. We'll see what Rob Manfred ends up doing with this. He may consider it and decide it's still the same. But to me, I've always looked at the Hall of Fame, and the fact that Barry Bonds is not in, and Roger Clemens isn't in, two of the greatest players that I've ever seen are not in the Hall of Fame, and were Hall of Famers before PEDs. It's a whole thing, but I think, to me, it's just considering it now is kind of taking the easy way out for Manfred when this has been out there for a long time. We'll see what they decide to do, but to me, that's going to be, I think, interesting to monitor what decision gets made and whether Pete Rose gets a chance to be on the mound, how the writers would handle that, because we're used to analyzing every writer. I mean, Ichiro doesn't get unanimously in the Hall of Fame, so who knows with these writers all the time, but time will tell. Anyway, that is our show for this week, episode 3, as we are 2 weeks away from the start of the Major League Baseball season. The AL East, of course, is going to provide, I think, some very competitive drama. We did mention a Hiroki Sasaki update. He had he was throwing consistently over 99 miles an hour. So if that's the kind of stuff the Dodgers are good to get, he is going to be fun to watch. Can he keep it up for a full year? We shall see, but definitely Dodger fans had to be thrilled with what Hiroki Sasaki did tonight in spring training behind Yamamoto. But 2 weeks away from Cubs Dodgers, we're about 3 weeks away from the start of the Major League season here in the States. And it should provide some fun. We have some great ranked matchups in college softball to monitor this week. And then baseball, you have the big Stanford UNC matchup. Not a lot of ranked versus ranked in baseball this week, but there's always some interesting storylines that come out of the NCAAs at any level as we get into March and conference play and all of those things. Of course, I want to remind you that if you enjoy this show and want to give us a little bit of support, join our supporters club. The link is on the bottom of the screen for listening here on YouTube. It's $5 a month. And if you are a subscriber, you'll be able to get an episode on your favorite team, your favorite player. You can even be a guest maybe on the show if you feel so inclined. We're happy to add you to our starting rotation. Be sure to join our supporters club. We would greatly appreciate it. Again, follow us on X at BP_IESR. Follow me on X at Regainer555. Alden at VAZTRL, who I'm sure is going to be yelling about the Suns and stuff because he wants to talk about Diamondbacks usually. And Let's Wine_IESR. Maybe some wine glass choices. Talk about the Wizards and some other stuff going on with the Orioles and Nationals. Commanders get some receivers, so he's our NFL draft guy too. So if you're into NFL draft stuff, Mike is the guy for you. Of course, my show, New York State Sports, every Monday. I'll be going live at noon Monday at the start of NFL free agency. So that should be a lot of fun. Of course, in the Big East tournament, the things on coming up next week. should be some fun. Thanks to all those who tuned in tonight. Over 150 of you. It's been a lot of fun. From all of us here at IE Sports Radio, for Larry B, for Ralph, for Alden, for Mike, I'm Ricky saying have a great rest of your night, a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.